I don't know how many of you have ever tried to pull an all-nighter for one reason or another. Maybe it was fun at a sleepover or a youth group lock-in or something like that, where you're up all night, trying to stay up all night with your friends. You're going to see that morning dawn. If you're out in the country, maybe hear the cock crow. You're going to make it through the entire night, because that is the goal, only to find it harder and harder when the excitement, the adrenaline begins to wind down, only to maybe pass out at 3, 4 in the morning, not quite making it there. Yes, it reminds me of a birthday I had once. I have a birthday in February, so yes, you have a couple more months to get ready for all the gifts you're going to come pouring in to me, I'm sure. But yes, we have February birthday, and so it was a great snow when I was a teenager, I believe, like 13, 14, somewhere in there, and we lived at the seminary campus in Gettysburg. It had a great big hill behind us, and I had a sleepover, and the goal was we were going to sled all night. And so we made it pretty late before getting so cold we had to come in. And then we were going to wait and go out at like 4 in the morning or 5 or 6 in the morning and sled too. But we didn't quite make it because we fell asleep. Maybe you were staying up for college. Or in high school, you were prepping that paper you had to have, that project for the next day, and you stayed up all night to do it, only to find yourself in the morning laying face down on your keyboard, realizing, whoops, I fell asleep. Whatever it may be, it's hard to always stay awake. And it's hard to always be aware of every single thing going on around us. It's not always easy to lose or to never lose our focus, to never be distracted, to always be doing the right thing at the right time. But that's what Jesus says in our gospel lesson today. Be prepared. Be ready. Stay awake, because you don't know when Christ will return. And you don't want to be caught asleep or unprepared. Yes, this is the season of Advent. We've begun this time of the church year where it's about being prepared. It's about actively waiting. It's not just get things in order and then sit and put your feet up and just wait and sit around. It's to actively wait. It's to continually be preparing, continually to do the work that Christ has given us to do. Jake, if you could actually back up on the slides to the confession and the forgiveness, I want us to take a look at that again real quick. So when you have that ready, go ahead. All right, it's up on the screen. So here's part of the reality. We said this in our confession a little bit earlier, is that we don't always get it right. We confess that we are held captive by sin. What does that mean? That means no matter what, we can never be totally free of making mistakes. Believe it or not, nobody's perfect. It's hard for me to believe because I'm pretty confident I'm perfect, but I've heard before I've made a mistake. Right? In spite of our best efforts, we said in our confession, we have gone astray. And so we then confess some of the ways in which we do fall a little short. We have not welcomed the stranger. It's always tempting to just ignore that person we don't know. Ignore the people that aren't friends or families. Ignore the refugees, the asylum seekers. Ignore the people harmed by warfare. Ignore the people affected by hunger. Ignore the people affected by violence or abuse. Whatever it may be, it's easier to just push them away because we don't exactly want that sort of drama in our life. We don't want to have to move outside of our own comfort zone to actually pay attention, right? And that moves us right into we have not loved our neighbor. We have not been Christ to one another. We have not actively prepared for the coming of Christ by following Jesus' command. The two great commandments that Jesus gives us, to love God above all things and to love God with everything that we have, everything that we are, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. Or even harder in the Gospel of John, to love one another as Jesus has loved us. To be Christ for each other. And what does that mean? Being willing to give sacrificially in every single way. With our money, with our time, with our talents and abilities and skills, with our interests, whatever it may be, to be able to sacrifice our comfort for the sake of helping and loving our neighbor. Right? Then we ask God to restore us, to wake us up. There it is. They used language from today's lesson right there in our confession. And to turn us from sin. And to renew us each day in the light of Christ. So yes, what does it mean to prepare and to be ready? What does it mean to stay awake? Well, it's to do those things. To provide for those who are in any need. To work for justice and peace for those who are marginalized and easily forgotten, the strangers in our midst. To welcome people. To do all these things that we just confess we don't always do correctly. Yes, this text can be a little scary because it talks about don't be asleep. Christ is going to come at any point, and it's right. Christ could appear at any point in time. It could be 5 seconds from now or 5,000 years from now. We don't know. But we are to always be prepared. We are to actively work to share the good news of Jesus, the gospel message, through our words, by telling people about it, sharing our video, inviting people to worship, inviting them to Bible study, for ourselves to attend Bible studies, ministry opportunities, worship opportunities, whatever it may be. To prepare through our actions, through what we do or don't do. But Advent's about not only waiting for Christ to return the second time, but yes, it's also about waiting for God to enter the world, in a sense, the first time as well, knowing that, yes, we are leading up to Christmas. It's kind of this dual waiting, preparation. And that's where the good news, of course, breaks in. Because, as we just looked at our confession and forgive us, we know that we're not always perfect. Yes, not even me. We know that we can't rely only on ourselves. And that's where this color of blue, this color of hope, this color of expectation gives us hope. Because Christ broke into this world as a little baby so that we would have hope. Christ gave himself on the cross and was raised on the third day so that we have hope, so that we have forgiveness, so that we have salvation. So we don't rely on our own works, but we give thanks and live into the promises that Jesus has already done for us. So one of the ways the blue also reminds us a little bit of is water. And in our baptism, we have been renewed and are renewed daily. That last part there of our confession and forgiveness, renew us each day in the light of Christ. Through the sacrament of baptism, we are washed. We are made clean of the sins that we commit and the sins of this world. And that happens every single day. In the light of Christ, as we light a candle at our baptism, as we light the candle of hope, right? As we begin this countdown to Christmas and the 4 candles of Advent as the days and nights become darker, it's this reminder that through baptism our hope continues to live on. and that every day we are renewed. Every day we are made perfect in the image of God. Do we still make mistakes? Of course we do. Of course we make mistakes. We can see and feel those mistakes from ourselves and from others in the pains of this world all around us. We know right now is a different time. Last night we celebrated Light Up York digitally because we cannot be together because of COVID. We maybe spent Thanksgiving apart from loved ones because of COVID-19, and Christmas is going to look the same way. But we do celebrate hope. We do celebrate expectation as we also look at the good news in the world around us of the vaccines that are coming forward that hopefully can begin to be distributed soon, and we can begin to see that hope at the end of this pandemic. Yes, we can see signs of this world all around us, of examples of the pain and suffering of this world, but also the hope that can be found through the gifts of science or leadership or whatever it may be, these gifts that God has empowered us for people who have used their talents and abilities and money and resources to make these things happen. So this season is full, yes, of the shadows of life, of the pains of the world, pains that are being amplified right now by the pandemic. But it's also a time of hope. It's a time then also of being prepared, actively preparing to stay awake for when Christ will return. How? By being Christ for each other, by loving our neighbors, by welcoming strangers, by sacrificing for the sake of everybody else, so that we can all have the hope and life that God has given for the world. So we move on, we await that day, we scream out for that hope and that waiting and that desire for Christ. And until that time, as we stay awake and we keep each other accountable, we continue to worship, pray, study, serve, and do all the things that help us to remain strong in the faith. Amen.